And then when it pops up there, you'll be able to see that we're recording.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone to the August Infrastructure and Engineering meeting. Glad to see you all here. I'm going to read our requirement. Members of the board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic declared on March 16th, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. So we have 4 presentations today, and we're starting with the Upper Harbor Terminal, the Dowling Avenue North, Parkway 33rd Avenue North, with Alexander Cato, Nathan Costner, Ahmad Omer, and I think it's Clara Schletling, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Chris Bauer. So you guys take it away. Thank you.
Hey everybody, just getting my video set up. Today it's going to be a little bit of a smaller group. It's going to be myself. I'm Alexander Cato, transportation planner with the city of Minneapolis and engagement lead for the infrastructure. And then I'm joined by our great engineer and friend, Chris Bauer. Chris, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick to everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Bauer. I'm a senior engineer with Tool Design in our Minneapolis office, and I've been working on the design of all the various components of Upper Harbor Terminal.
Awesome. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go through this presentation. There's a lot of infrastructure on here, so I'll try to move things as quickly as possible. What is our stop time? Is it 5 or 4:50?
Well, we have 4 presentations, so I'm guessing 20-25 minutes.
Okay. I'll try to move through this as quick as I can to give folks time to ask questions.
Okay.
I'd love to hear how you all feel about this, so we'll just hop right into it. This is the 30% concept. We are going to our open house next Tuesday, and yeah, so this is, you're seeing it fresh before we go there, and then we're going to go to layout in October, so this is moving along quickly, and thank you for having us today. This is the infrastructure, the Upper Harbor Terminal. The starting point is Dowling and Lindale. That goes all the way in, across Dowling, across the bridge, into the site. We have phase 1 of the UHT Parkway, and then we also have the secondary access at 33rd Avenue North. So it's over a mile of infrastructure. If you were to walk all of this, if you're moving fast, maybe 30 minutes, but I think with all the exciting things there, it might take you an hour and a half or longer. So there's a lot of content there. We've been engaging over the last year. Some of the biggest pieces around our engagement are really touched on how do non-motorists get to the site safely? So how do cyclists, how do pedestrians, how do scooter riders, how do people in wheelchairs, how do people that are not taking vehicles get there, and also transit as well. We all know the barrier that exists with I-94, and so we've really tried to provide multimodal options that are safe, reliable, and really connect into the broader network as well. I'm going to skip the engagement slides because I kind of just talked through that. Those are there if you want to review them. You all have this presentation. I'm just going to hop into Upper Dowling. So this is kind of the first piece of infrastructure. We call it Upper Dowling because it's on the western side of the bridge. It's at a higher elevation. This is the intersection of Lindale Avenue North. And you can see that we have a shared use path treatment on the south side of the roadway, 10-foot width. We have 2 vehicle travel lanes. This says 11, they're actually 10-foot travel lanes, so I apologize for the graphic error. Tight timelines, trying to get things to you as soon as possible, but these are 10-foot travel lanes. We also have a 6-foot sidewalk. We have some nice boulevard. If you've been out at Dowling now, you know it's face a curb and the sidewalk. There's no boulevard. There's bike lanes in the street and they're just painted on the roadway. This is a high volume roadway, about 15,000 vehicles a day. And so in those type of situations, we'd like to separate motorists from cyclists. And our design does that. We are sharing that space with pedestrians. The reality is we have a really constrained right of way. In certain situations throughout the city, when we don't have enough space to separate bikes and cyclists, we combine them as a shared use path. This is a similar treatment to what's on 26th Avenue North, which is about a mile and a half south that extends from the Mississippi River outlook that just got put in all the way to Theoworth Parkway. We're also planning to extend this treatment in the next 15 years or in the next 10-ish plus years through our CIP cycle as we continue to reconstruct the rest of Dowling. So we're intending to extend this treatment all the way to Theoworth Parkway. So you'll have a really nice east-west connection across this section of Minneapolis. We also have a bump out here. There'll be a transit pad located here. We have raised crossings here and here. This, which we're working with MnDOT very diligently, would be the first ever raised crossing on a MnDOT facility. So it's a really exciting endeavor. Chris has really been leading that design and can talk through some of that in further detail. But we're really excited about that. Chris, you want to just provide a little context on that?
Yeah, so you can see a raised crossing on the residential street. We're also proposing it on both of the ramps on either side of 94. And the reason we're doing it on the south side there is because we have the trail going through. We have a large number of bikes and peds crossing. So the goal with the raised crosswalk is to slow down motor vehicles as they're making that turning movement. And the details we need to work out with MnDOT are how to make this work for all the trucks moving through there. So we've just got a lot of details to sort out. So stay tuned on how all that goes. Another feature at the ramps, I'll point out on the north side of the road, you can see that pink area. That's intended as a raised truck apron. And that does kind of the same thing. We're attempting to slow down vehicles that are coming off of those ramps and turning onto Dowling to try and reduce the likelihood of a pedestrian crash at that location. So two kind of innovative treatments we're working through with MnDOT. Yeah, looking forward to what we come up with there.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to slide into the bridge. Does anyone have any questions on Upper Dowling? Okay, we'll keep moving along. Next slide is the Dowling Bridge. I apologize for the pixelation of my image. So this is the bridge. There's still quite a bit of life left in this bridge. It hasn't exceeded its useful life. So MnDOT does have plans to, improve this bridge in the future when it kind of reaches that stage, but that's quite a bit off. So we had to use kind of the best with what we had and kind of how do we repurpose this space to meet the kind of existing current and future needs of the area. So we're keeping the northern sidewalk in place. We're also keeping the southern sidewalk in place. Those are both 7-foot sidewalks, and we're adding in a two-way.
Which slide?
We're on
Can you just let me know which slide we're on?
slide 7.
Thank you.
So we have the two-way cycle track here. This is going to be 12 feet of width. We're also proposing a 2-foot buffer with a 6-foot curb and delineators. This will also be a first on a MnDOT facility. So as Chris alluded to with the raised crossings, we're also working with MnDOT on adding in that raised curb because this would be a first on the MnDOT facility. And so there's quite a bit of design details to work through, but it's a design that we are recommending and hoping to secure an agreement with MnDOT on that treatment type. So this is kind of the start of where you start to see the separation of cyclists and peds. Like I said, when we can, we like to separate them. And in this situation, we have the space to do so. So we have a 12-foot two-way cycle track. We have a 7-foot sidewalk. And this treatment generally continues all the way east into the site and is pretty consistent throughout the parkway as well. We also have a raised crossing section here on the other side of the bridge that Chris is continuing to coordinate with MnDOT. And you see this two-way cycle track continuing east into the site. A few things to note on Washington. If you've been on the northern part of Washington, you know there's one-way bike lanes in each direction. They're just painted. There's no physical separation. So we're going to have this two-way bike facility here. And then we're actually going to work with the county and they're going to repaint this northern section of Washington. So they'll have a two-way cycle track on the east side of the road. They're going to put in bollards and they're going to continue that treatment all the way up to Lindale to the Weber Camden 44 project. So we're able to connect this facility all the way north to provide more regional connectivity for our cyclists. To the south, we have a really wide one-way cycle track here, which will continue into the existing one-way bike lane on Washington. We're also doing the same on the south side. This looks like a really wide sidewalk, but this will connect into the southbound bicycle facility that's on street as painted. We are exploring opportunities we have to improve the southern stretch of Washington as well, but that's still quite a bit off, but we're working through that as well. Chris, did I miss anything at the bridge or with the intersection?
No, I think you hit all the major points.
Okay. Questions from the audience on this part? Matt, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the width, the current width of the sidewalk on the south side of that bridge is.
It's 7 feet, so that's staying in place as is at 7 feet.
Great, thanks.
I'm noticing we don't have all legs of the crossings at that eastern intersection
Can you repeat that, please?
of the bridge. We're missing a leg of the crossing on the eastern side of the bridge. The west pedestrian crossing is missing.
Here? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not, sorry. I'm missing out on the cursor, but I am looking at the slide. So it's
Yeah,
just
Julia,
like
we got the right one.
okay.
Yep, Alexander pointed to the right one. Yep.
Awesome.
Chris Bauer, did you have?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. That's a really good question. As we're coming down the bridge and approaching Washington, there's actually a pretty steep grade. The roadway is at 5.5%, which is just a little bit over what ADA would call for. And we have very limited distance between that intersection and the end of the bridge. And we can't do a whole lot with the bridge. As Alexander mentioned, the bridge is still in good condition. It's going to stay as is. It's very, very difficult for us to fit ADA ramps in there without doing some kind of switchback or something very goofy with the sidewalk. So given the ADA challenges that we have in here making this work, we made the decision that we would omit just that one crossing. Because otherwise, like I mentioned, we'd have to resort to something very goofy like a switchback to try and make this work from an ADA perspective.
I think from a usability perspective, it's much goofier to not have basic pedestrian infrastructure. I understand that there might be logistical and the engineering component, but especially looking at the reduced crossing width there compared to the parallel crosswalk to its east, having that option I think is not really negotiable, even if it does lead to a switchback for people using wheelchairs.
Okay. I mean, we could take that feedback back and look into it.
Oh.
Promise that we'll be able to accommodate
Thank
that,
you.
but we appreciate the comment.
I mean, I know that MnDOT has a history of not providing all legs, but they don't have a policy of that. And the Pedestrian Advisory Committee has passed a resolution really urging being able to cross the street where you need to is the most basic infrastructure, or not even where you need to, at the very limited places where we provide crosswalks. So having all legs of all intersections is an ongoing request for basic walkability from us generally. Thank you.
No,
And I
thank
also am concerned. I'm concerned about the intersection to its east. That one's just really unpleasant to be in. I'm wondering what might be able to be done to sort of reduce that the giant swath of asphalt that means drivers are not really looking for people walking using wheelchairs, like roundabout, or if there's just some way of tightening up turns
you. So
and functional turns.
go ahead, Chris.
That's a really good question. That intersection is very challenging. This is an industrial area, and fitting trucks in here is something that we've been wrestling with all of these locations. We've done some things to improve that intersection based on what it is today. So right now, you can't see the existing underneath it, but it's an offset intersection. It's very wide open. By trying to square all 4 legs of the intersection up. We've done a little bit to shorten some of those crossing distances. The other thing that we've done is we've made this a protected intersection. So we've separated the bikes. We've given the bikes and peds an advanced queuing space. You'll notice how far back the stop bars are from the ped crossings on some of these legs and the bike crossings.
Mhm.
That's to give the peds and bikes more visibility. And then not shown in this drawing, but something that we're actively looking at is what we can do with the signal operations to minimize conflicts as well. There are strategies like a leading pedestrian interval where the ped signal comes up before the motor vehicle, so we can get the pedestrians out in front of motor vehicles. Things like that are things we're looking into as well to try and minimize conflicts. But it's hard with the need to accommodate trucks through this area. It's very difficult to reduce the size of that intersection. We've done basically as much as we can just while still allowing the trucks through.
I've been thinking about pork chops lately, and I know that we've really requested that those be removed, but I've definitely seen, I saw a picture recently of Nicollet Island where a pork chop was removed and the radius wasn't tightened. And I've been thinking a lot about how when we have these huge radii, if we can tighten them up as much as possible and provide maybe some sort of physical protection so that there's that island that you're skipping to, and that's also helping drivers not just take as free of a turn as they want. I don't know if that's, whatever you can be doing to tighten that up, especially since we don't always arrive and wait for the light. We come, after it's turned, and drivers just really aren't generally paying much attention.
I appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
Matthew, were you next, I think?
Yeah, I just have I think a simple question. On the west leg crossing of Washington and right there. I'm just curious. Like the northwest corner is looks like a kind of a fan ramp, and couldn't you just kind of like tweak it a little to have it maybe bring the southwest corner east a little and have it be directional? Or what's the thinking on that? I know the radius probably needs to be what it is for certain movements, but couldn't you fit in fan ramps there? Or directional?
It's a great comment, Matt. It's also a comment that we got during our review of these drawings, and we made some tweaks to squeeze in a bit of a directional ramp. So
Cool.
What we're going to see next that goes to the council, it should be a little more directional. It is still a pretty flat radius. So ideally with directional ramps, we'd have some, a good deal of separation in so we can get a nice long stretch of full height curb. We don't have a lot of that. We might only get up to like 3-inch curb or something in the middle. But the latest iteration of this is a little more directional than what we have in here. Good comment.
So now I'm going to move on to slide 8, which is lower.
I have a
There's
question.
a question of
Christopher.
Yeah. The leg that's missing that Julie asked about, I think I got a little confused there. You said that it is the steepness of the topography that permits it placement. So you're talking about the steepness that runs down Dowling into the site. So there's nothing about the the crossing Dowling with the angle, right?
That's a really good question. Yeah. To explain a little bit more what I'm getting at, whenever we have a crossing, we need a level landing ahead of that for that curb ramp. So if we were to add a second curb ramp crossing the road, we'd need another level landing. And the difficulty is getting from that second level landing back up to the bridge and having an ADA compliant grade in between. So to accomplish that, we'd have to do a little zigzag in the entire sidewalk for everyone to try and get back up to the bridge grade while still maintaining, ADA compliant slopes along Dowling. If that makes sense.
I'm sure it does, but I'm not following it. Are you talking about the south side, the landing there, for example, where the stop bar is?
The south side, actually, we've got more length, so we've got a longer room to chase that out. It's really the north side of Dowling where we have issues.
So if the stop bar was a crosswalk, so the landing area at the stop bar on the north side is what prohibits. There's enough of a gradient just in that 7 feet or whatever the crosswalk would be?
Yeah, if we were to attempt to have a second landing for the movement across Dowling, that flat area would make it impossible to get back up to the bridge without doing some kind of circuitous design with the walk along Dowling. That's what we're up against.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is slide 8, which is Lower Dowling. So this is just east of Washington. This is the, kind of formal entry into the site. In this, you'll see the continuation of that two-way cycle track. You'll see some boulevard space. You'll see a sidewalk continue as well. There are 2 active rail crossings here. Frequency is about 4 times a week. So with that, there'll be active gate warnings that extend across the roadway and the bike ped facilities. We have 2 medians in here as well in the roadway to prevent motorists from attempting to drive into an alternative travel lane to get around the gate arms and bypass the train. What else we have here? We also have the entry into the site, and you'll see a potential raised intersection sign that we're pursuing to really provide design cues to slow vehicle speeds at that critical intersection as folks enter the site. And then the parkway extends north and south here. This is the starting point of the parkway. The illustration at the bottom is tough to see, I realize, but it shows that two-way cycle track with some boulevard plantings adjacent to the proposed development. Does anyone have any questions on this piece, on this lab? This is the last section of Dowling before we get into the parkway. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the parkway. I apologize, the slide order is a little off. I'm going to come back to 33rd because I know this is a really popular discussion piece at our last meeting. So I'm gonna go into the parkway and then we'll come back to 33rd. So we're on slide 10 now. If you have the deck, you should be on slide 10. This is the parkway. This is the raised crossing. Then we're entering into the parkway. The color is a little bit more red than you would typically see, but just know that when it's actually implemented, it'll resemble that red granite chip seal that you see on all the parkways in the city. We're going to have 10-foot travel lanes in each direction. You'll see a sidewalk that continues. You'll see a bike trail on the south side and then a trail as well. This will continue through the park. The park board just has not finalized their concepts for the parkway or for the park yet. And so we left this area a little blank just because we're still waiting on that process. We're a little ahead of them. There will be parking within the parkway. We haven't finalized that number, but it's going to be something in the a couple dozen range at these little park bays here that you see kind of along the parkway. Typical with a lot of the parkway facilities in the city, but still a very low parking volume. This concludes phase 1 right here, which will be right adjacent to the concert venue. We're also working with Metro Transit to ensure that the parkway can accommodate Metro Transit buses for layovers, turnarounds, and for stop locations. It's an ongoing discussion in terms of where they will actually be, but we've been very engaged with them so that when transit does come to the site, that it's already integrated into the design and we're not having to backtrack things. Any questions on the parkway?
I'm curious. It seems like the latest IPCC report will be impacting how this gets designed, and I wonder, especially as you're talking about sort of including parking as usual, if you have any insight, I know you might not yet, but how that will shift the design going forward.
Which report are you referring to?
The International Panel on Climate Change released their report a week ago Monday, and we basically need to be at net zero by 2030 with more and deeper and faster cuts coming from places like Minneapolis that have been historically pretty wealthy and high emissions. So we're needing to cut faster.
I mean,
and that's with,
I know there's a lot of controversy around parking, and but the reality is we will be providing some parking on the parkway. Some people
I understand.
Ability to.
But I mean,
And so
The
like
reality is,
it's leading that process on the parking allocation. You know, I guess I don't know what else to really say about that.
so I understand that there's sort of those political realities of people who are not essentially climate deniers within city structures and pressures, but even phasing that out as we shift, like whether or not that's how it's built, but how is this in alignment with our actual physical reality where, like, if we don't do this, we're looking at societal collapse in the near term.
One thing we're doing to help with mode shift a little bit on this, there's no Metro Transit service out to this location today, but we're working to develop some of these parking areas as potential bus layover areas instead, and also size the cul-de-sacs to support transit service so that if we're able to get, this design will be fully supportive of transit service, and, we can use some of that parking area for bus layover instead, which would help.
Definitely really appreciate that. And maybe I'm just a little premature in asking the question given how recent the report is and that it doesn't have the working report yet. But I'm more concerned about how we have the data that the direness of the 2018 assessment is absolutely optimistic compared to what we're actually facing. And I am eager to hear, because I really respect the city staff and city processes, I'm eager to hear how projects will start shifting to help us get there. So I don't mean to put that on you. This is the first PAC meeting we've had since that report was released and I read it. So I will refrain from now.
Well, no, thank you.
I just have a note. We have just a little time left, so I want to make sure we get to 33rd, and I know Christopher has a question too, so we need to speed it up a little bit.
Just so I'm clear, when this project is finalized, the MTC will be fully up and running at that time. That's my understanding. There's no lag time. If this finishes and then bus comes later, but the plan is a simultaneous opening of the service to it by MTC and the completion of it.
No, so that's a really good question. Metro Transit, and once again, I recognize I am not a Metro Transit staff member. I'm trying to think of when they go into situations providing service when demand is realized, demand has not yet been realized. When the construction of the parkway is complete, which is going to be construction starts in 23 and will be done in 24, 25. And then development will start happening kind of within that time frame as well. I'd say that Metro Transit stance is when development is realized, when density is realized, then they will provide that service. So the timetable for that is reflective of when people are actually living and working on the site. And there's some flexibility as to when that will happen. So
that in between time when density is realized, it's anticipated from the city's perspective that it'll be auto-centric. I mean, you'll get out there, unless you ride your bike or something, it'll be by car, right?
No, I don't think the absence of transit automatically means that it'll be auto-centric. There's not a lot of places to even park a vehicle here, so I still think there's going to be a variety of mode share. I just can't definitively say when Metro Transit will be here because that's just like out of my jurisdiction to definitively say. I can tell you that we're designing the park to best accommodate transit, and the thought is that they will be coming shortly after, but when that is tough for me to really speculate.
Thank you.
But I'm glad you asked that question because I think some people do assume that, and that is not true. When transit comes, they're working through that process with us, but it's on a different timeline than us. We Public Works installing infrastructure are the first folks out there doing anything. We're going to be ahead of development, buildings, all of that stuff. Our plans are ahead of that.
I just want to know. Sorry, I don't know. Sonia has her hand up, probably to respond to the transit.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I just wanted to highlight that there is transit in the area. Maybe it doesn't go exactly to the shoreline, but on North Lindale Avenue is Route 22. And on Dowling, we have Route 32 and the 721. So Lindale is actually just a couple blocks from, the bridge over 94 on Dowling. So it's not quite door-to-door service, but there is service in the area today. And I can follow up with who's working on this project at Metro Transit and get some more information on their market analysis for bringing transit to the site.
Yeah,
Great.
glad you're on, Sonia. We have Victoria Dan from Metro Transit we've been working with, and she's going to be
Great.
presenting at the open house on Tuesday. So I hope I didn't misspeak about Metro Transit and how they approach providing service. It's a little more nuanced than my understanding is of the non-Metro Transit employee.
Great. Thanks.
All right. I'm going to skip to slide 9, 33rd Avenue. Slide 9 in your deck. I apologize for the order confusion. So this was a pretty, controversial topic when we last met with you all. We showed you just 33rd because we knew we wanted to get feedback from you all. We had two options. One was this option, and then one was without a sidewalk. So this option has the sidewalk. It also does expand the roadway width. The original design we had was more narrow. We went out there and physically painted the roadway and kind of saw what was occurring, and we just realized that it really wouldn't work. So the effective roadway width here is 32 feet. That is the same as the effective roadway width today when the south side of the street is parked with vehicles, which it normally is. So the effective roadway width remains unchanged relatively. What is changed is the addition of a sidewalk on the south side. There was no southern sidewalk. What is new is the addition of a shared use path on the north side. There are no biker ped facilities on this entire stretch. So this is what you see here. There's also a roundabout here to facilitate vehicle movements. This was a challenging design. There's a lot of vehicle activity. There's no bike ped facilities. It's a really constrained right of way. It's the only option we have for a secondary access to the site. So it's challenging, I'm not gonna lie. And you have 3 active rail lines here as well. So there's gate arm crossings as well. Chris, is there anything critical I'm missing just from an engineering standpoint before we let folks ask questions?
Just to kind of underscore a point that you mentioned, we are removing all of the parking along 33rd. There will be no motor vehicle parking along this stretch. We've also added raised crosswalks across the roundabout to make those crossings more comfortable.
I appreciate the addition of the sidewalk. I went out and for a couple of hours, a couple of different days, just to see what was going on, since it seemed like particularly, what you were describing before was fairly interesting. I'm wondering if you can go into more detail. There was fairly low use when I was out there, and it was rush hour on a weekday. And definitely didn't seem to be, I felt comfortable just completely walking in the street. That's how low the volumes were at all points that I was out there across 3 different days. Can you share a little bit more about why the street can't go narrower, or what those constraints are?
So I did a site visit myself. Ahmed Omar, who's the project engineer, and then Tyler, who's also working with Chris on the designs. We went out there on a Friday in June between, I think we were out there from about 10 a.m. to noon. And I would say at one point there was, upwards of, 10 full-size trucks navigating through this roadway, making deliveries at Libra, at this section of GAF, at this section of GAF, and this section of GAF. And the sections, just like I'm pointing to the parts of GAF. So there was upwards of 10 53-foot trucks navigating through this space. It would not work with 2 single lanes.
So it's specific, it's very specific times of day, and then that it's high volume. Sounds like, because I took pictures of literally every single vehicle I saw during a 2.5-hour period, and it was not that many.
So when I was there, like I said, I was there between 10 a.m. to noon. I think the heavy volume is probably 9 to 3. So you said you were there at rush hour, a
little earlier than 3. So, but if it were earlier in the day, I was not out there earlier on a weekday at any of the 3 times.
Mhm. I mean, GAF alone
Is-
has 100 trucks a day coming to the site. That's
Is-
probably a
Is that
lot.
a self-report? Or do we know? I know we have limited time, so I'll just make a comment. I'm wondering when we're seeing this, where it's like really a specific time of day, I don't know if there's the chance to work with property owners to spread deliveries out or whatever is going on, because Winnet Street has an overall really low volume, but we're designing it for that, like, 1 or 2 hour stretch, a couple times a week. So thank you.
Paul, St. Martin?
Yes, I was just wondering what's the purpose of the 8-foot striped median down the middle of the street?
Very good question. The reason that we need to have a median in the middle of the street is to facilitate turning movements in and out of these various businesses. Those trucks require a great deal of space to physically turn in and out of these locations. And if we didn't provide that median, what would wind up happening is the trucks would drive over a portion of the sidewalk or the shared use path. Just simply because they require so much room for that trailer to swing out wide as they're making these lefts and rights in and out of these driveways. So by providing that median, what we're trying to do is keep trucks off of the ped and bike space and give them space in the roadway to make those turns in and out of these entrances.
Okay, and as a follow-up, at the the crosswalk right before the I'll call it the cul-de-sac or roundabout at the end, is there any way you can do a raised median right before that crosswalk on towards the track side?
Are you talking about this section I'm highlighting right here, right before the race cross
Right.
at the roundabout crosswalk?
That's a good comment. That's something we can look into. It'll depend a little bit on how like truck trailers track through that curve, but I think that's something we could consider.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
Okay, I think we need to move on if there's hopefully no other questions. We appreciate your presentation today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. Sorry, it's a lot to cover on a really small.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much
Thank you.
for your feedback.
Next up, we have Minnehaha and 50th with Madeline Hudick from Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Hello. Like Jody's got the presentation up. Jody will be presenting this evening. She is working on the project with me.
Okay.
So I'll hand it over to Jody.
Thanks, Madeline. Hi, everyone. I'm Jody Rader. I'm with HKGI, and we are working with Stantec along with the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board on Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail implementation projects. So today we'll do a quick introduction and then we'll go over a quick overview of the master plan that was recently completed for the full parkway, and then we'll get into the primary project area, which is the intersection improvements at 50th Street and Minnehaha Parkway, and then talk about next steps. So like I said, I'm Jody Rader. I'm a landscape architect with HKGI, and we also worked with the park board on the master plan process. And then we have Madeline Hudick, and is Carol on the line as well?
I don't.
Oh, we also have
I'm
Carol
here. Yep, I'll be taking
Okay.
notes. Today.
Awesome. Also from the park board. So Madeline and Carol, if I miss something, please just interrupt and jump in. I can't really see your faces. So we'll quickly go over the master plan process. The Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail Master Plan was completed in November of 2020. This process started in April of 2018, and we had a pretty robust community engagement plan and community engagement implementation throughout the planning process. with quite a few options for online engagement. We also had a community advisory committee where we held a dozen public meetings, as well as a number of open houses, MPRT in-houses, more web surveys, neighborhood meetings, site meetings, et cetera. So we feel like we had a pretty, like I said, a pretty robust community engagement process throughout the plan. And then right now we are working on implementation of some of the initial projects that were identified in that plan. In the master plan process, a memorandum of understanding was established between Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, the City of Minneapolis, and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And this understanding kind of ensured an establishment of a relationship between these three agencies throughout not just the planning process, but also through implementation. And I think when this was originally established, the intent was really focused on water resources, and which was maintained throughout the planning process. But I think at some point during the plan, we also realized that transportation was also a big part of this partnership. So yeah, the planning area, as probably most of you know, Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail is part of a 5-mile segment or 5-mile park that runs through South Minneapolis. Because Hiawatha and Nokomis had previously been master planned in 2015, we did not include that area in the study for the master plan, but we identified a number of focus areas, one of which being the Portland and Parkway focus area in segment 3, and that's where we will be talking today. In this area, we collected quite a few comments throughout the engagement process about the state of the trail, sight lines, ability for people to cross roadways, a lot of concern about safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, especially at Portland and the Parkway and at 50th Street and the Parkway, where the Parkway kind of bends around a corner here. About 2/3 of the way through the planning process, it became apparent that we should sort of pause and engage a traffic study in order to get a little bit better accurate count of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle movement throughout the study area, and to model some ideas about potential improvements. And so at this particular intersection, we had looked at what would be the outcomes if a 3-way stop was, a stop-controlled intersection was constructed at this intersection. Today, there's only a stop sign that is for the eastbound traffic coming off of the 50th Street Bridge. And I think if you've ever used the Parkway, you probably know this intersection well, because it's dangerous, and there's a lot of near misses because vehicles traveling do not necessarily understand who has the right of way and when to stop and what to do. So this traffic study modeled, like I said, what it would look like if this intersection had a 3-way stop, and the outcomes that were shown through the study were that with the combination of the traffic lights at Portland Avenue, that there would be some backup of traffic along the stretch, but it would not be an adverse effect, I guess, overall. And it was recommended through the planning study to try to move forward with creating a 3-way stop here. This is the kind of master plan of this area that includes the 3-way stop at that intersection, as well as showing a realignment of the roadway here to better tee up the intersection. I just want to note that the pedestrian path for the parkway is in orange, and that continues across this intersection, across the bridge, and then the pedestrian path is on the west side of the creek here. The bicycle path is shown in yellow. So this is a shared use path between Portland and 50th Street. And then after crossing 50th Street, the bike path splits and goes south along the east side of the creek. There's some other projects, well, many other projects were identified in this area. Some bank stabilization, other sidewalk improvements, curb extensions, looking at potentially realignment of some other intersections and integration of medians. Also looking at some opposing one-ways to curb some traffic, kind of cut through traffic that happens along this north leg of the parkway. But amongst all of the projects that were identified in this area and throughout the entire creek corridor, this intersection improvement was identified as the #1 priority by MPRB staff, the Community Advisory Committee, and community feedback at large. So to dive in, so right now we are kind of at the tail end of schematic design. We'll be working through some neighborhood meetings, and the park board will be meeting with city council members in the coming weeks. And then we'll be revising plans and working through construction documents through the winter, and then looking to bid, put the project out for bid and do construction in 2022. This is the project area. I just kind of threw these slides in here in case we need to come back to them for reference during discussion. This is the intersection that, like I said, I'm sure most folks are aware of if you've ever used the parkway. This is looking west towards 50th Street, and the parkway kind of bends to the south here. The pedestrian and bicycle crosswalk is here. There's, you know, obviously folks are using this north side of the parkway to get to where they are going, and there's not a sidewalk there today. Another view kind of closer in of that intersection. And then a little bit further south along the leg of Minnehaha Parkway, you can see the sidewalk along the east side, the bike trail along the west side. The bike trail kind of existing conditions, I guess the trail width varies as it goes around trees and tries to squeeze between the curb and the steep grade that drops down off into the creek here. So that's another item we were looking to address. And then just another view a little bit further east, the bunny statue is to the left here off of the screen. So our project goals are to improve the visibility for all trail users, improve the safety of trail users at the intersection, address legibility of intersection for drivers. And then some of the project components, realign the south leg of the intersection to T into the east-west roadway. There's a plan on the next slide, don't worry. And then design this for a future 3-way stop controlled intersection, expand the pedestrian curb ramp areas at crosswalks, upgrade the crosswalk markings, widen the trail segments to match the master plan recommendations, which throughout the parkway, we would be looking at a minimum of 12-foot width for shared use trails and a minimum of 10-foot for bicycle trails. Again, these are minimums. Other considerations, we really want to try to preserve as many healthy, mature trees as possible. This area has a lot of them. We'd like to maintain existing on-street parking if possible, although it's coming to be, I think, coming to light that this is probably the least of our priorities. And then we want to limit the disturbance of adjacent front yards. Again, maybe less of a priority, considering that there's a good amount of right-of-way. So this is the existing survey information. Again, you can see the geometry of this roadway is really not conducive for vehicles, both seeing pedestrians at the crosswalk and stopping for them. And there's some existing parking bays here, and then here's that bike path that kind of dives into the back of the curb and then widens back out here. This is a shared use path, and then it transitions to a sidewalk pedestrian path to the south. And so at this point in the design, we're looking at, again, teeing up this intersection. So realigning the south leg of the roadway, maintaining a 24-foot width here, trying to maintain that 24 width along this section of the roadway. That gives us some room to bump out the curb and create a wider landing for pedestrians at the crosswalk. We're trying to work in a wider curb ramp and waiting area here. We're a little bit constrained because that bridge, the bridge abutments begin right at the edge of where this curb ramp is. And this is actually a historic bridge and probably not slated to be replaced anytime soon. So we're working within the site constraints to try to make this area as large as possible. We're also looking at, with the realignment of this roadway, pulling back the bicycle path here, giving it a more consistent separation from the roadway, and then giving it a little bit more width to be consistent along this stretch. And we did get some feedback from the Bicycle Advisory Committee that a lot of pedestrians end up using this stretch of the trail. And so we might want to look at increasing the width here as well. Some other components are increasing the width of the trail here to match that 12 or 14 foot width. I think this is shown as 14 feet. 12 foot would be the minimum, but 14 feet would be preferable. And then adding a sidewalk connection along the north side of the parkway here. This is still, I think, a big question mark, primarily because there is quite a bit of erosion that's happening along the bank of the creek here, and we need to make sure that any further impervious surfaces aren't going to, undermine any improvements here. But we do know that pedestrians are obviously using this this stretch, and so we need to figure out a way to accommodate that. I think that's everything in the primary area. We're working on a cost estimate. We're still early in the process, so the project is also a little bit, the project scope is a little bit dependent on a few other moving parts. And then some kind of items for discussion or things that we are working through right now. The tree preservation, tree removal question. Like I said, we're constrained width-wise because of a lot of the mature trees, but we would like to try to preserve as many as possible. We'd like to widen the trail along Minnehaha Parkway for shared use. So this might mean pushing the trail a little bit further into front yards. However, if we look at the right-of-way area, we actually have quite a bit of right-of-way to do this. Looking at on-street parking along Minnehaha Parkway, it's becoming a little bit more apparent that we probably don't need this on-street parking here, and we could probably remove this bay in order to give more room for pedestrians and trees along this stretch. And then, we're also exploring preferred facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists at this intersection and throughout the whole project area. So the slide's a little bit old. We've actually rescheduled our CPTF meeting. That will be next week, but we met last week with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. We're meeting today with you all at the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And then throughout September, we'll be working through community engagement process to engage with local stakeholders and residents, and then revising the schematic design scope and begin design development in September, October. Work through plans and specifications through the winter of this year. And then, as I said, we're shooting to bid the project and do construction in 2022. So I will stop there and open it up for discussion unless Madeline or Carol, if there's anything you want to add.
Nope.
Awesome.
I have a quick question. Will you're at 30% right now, it says in your design, schematic design. Will you be wanting a resolution from us before you finish the design process? And will you be coming back if there are major changes to this? Those are the questions that I have for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're at the 30% milestone and that we wanted to get in front of this group, but maybe we're closer to 20%.
Okay.
So semantics there. I think because there's a little, the scope of the project is a little bit dependent financially on a few other projects around it. We haven't dived in super close into the details. And then as far as whether or not we need to come back to this committee, I think that might be more of a question for Madeline or Carol, or as far as a resolution needed, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that.
Okay.
I can jump in just for a moment. When we were with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, they were intending to prepare a resolution at that time with the intent or with the knowledge that if there were significant changes that we would be welcome or that we'd be open to coming back to the group to, discuss those changes. Okay. So I would imagine that this group operates fairly similarly to the BAC.
Okay. So we can get you a resolution, our response to this. And then, like I said, if there are changes, we'd be back and that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd say this is the opportunity, Barb.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Is this the project that we saw initially with floodplains and anticipated with climate breakdown, or is that a different project in the same area?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the second part of the project description.
We saw a project probably 3 years ago that was looking at the flow of the creek and what's in the floodplain, what isn't, and sort of managing and that in light of anticipated changes in precipitation with climate breakdown. And I just don't remember if this project, you mentioned it's kind of stormwater management related, and I don't remember if this is that one or if this is a separate one. I know you've got a lot going on in different departments.
This could have been, I don't think for the master plan process that we went before this committee at that time, but there were a few other kind of moving parts. I know with the FEMA improvements along the creek, potentially, definitely with the master plan process that was heavily focused on stormwater management and trying to design all future improvements to either be outside of the future floodplain, and then we did a lot of modeling to try to understand some of the potential changes in the floodplain, and so it sort of all got folded in together. There's an adjacent project. Oh, sorry, I'll just stop there.
What you're describing is what I'm remembering seeing.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that I have comments, but I want to make sure other people get to say things. Peter was unable to make it and did want to say that he was really appreciating what he was seeing in this. And I told him I would convey that, and he had a lot of enthusiasm for it. And he also was referencing a flyover. So I had not looked at the project yet when we spoke. So I'm just passing it on as close to verbatim as I can. But I want you to know that.
Cool. Thanks.
And Barb, I do have comments. If we have time, I want to not be taking all of the time.
Okay. Are there any other people with questions? Paul?
Sure. Quick question. I'm just wondering if you considered to put in a raised crosswalk where the trail crosses Minnehaha Parkway at the, the south leg of the three-way all-stop intersection.
Yeah, so we actually got a similar feedback from the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and so we'll definitely be taking that into consideration as we go further with the design.
Okay.
And that was a facility that was also identified in the master plan as a potential facility at intersections. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I will second Peter Vader's comments that Julia shared, that I live not far from this and spent some time on this, both driving and walking my dog. And I really am appreciative of some of these changes. I think this will be, it's very scary to walk across some of these legs of this intersection, so that it looks a lot better.
Okay, good to hear.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Okay. Well, we will prepare a resolution for you and get that to you, and we appreciate your presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I ask?
Oh,
or
sure.
make one
I'm sorry.
comment, ask one question? No worries. I just finished reading the IPCC report and seeing the way that increased frequency of really high precipitation events comes up and the way that impacts stormwater management. I am super curious where things are at in looking at projects to really be designing for what we've already locked in, as well as reducing emissions. And that's sort of a broad comment, but I also, if you have anyone to talk to more to find out what the city's doing and how we can support it as the PAC, do you have any thoughts offhand, or could you share them with us maybe in the future if anything pops to mind?
Yeah, I think on a really high level, the fact that the master plan was completed with a joint partnership with the city of Minneapolis and the watershed district kind of speaks volumes to the commitment, I think, on all three agencies to really address water quality and water volume in this area. And then on a more specific level within this project area, we are kind of looking at trying to figure out if it makes sense to integrate some improvements here at the 5th Avenue outfall and coordinate some other improvements with some of the outfalls in this area to accommodate for changes in flow that we're seeing more regularly with the creek. And also overall, the creek project, if you read the master plan, you'll see that there's quite a bit in there about stormwater management and addressing the anticipated changes that we see with climate change in the creek corridor. So yes.
Thank you so much. Given that what we're hearing is so much more dire than what we even heard in 2018, and the city doesn't seem to have quite caught up to the 2018 report itself, is there anything automatically sort of saying, oh, if we get different numbers, if, as things shift, everything in our processes will automatically change the volumes we anticipate or change the frequency or adjust for what the scenario we actually face when we have more data and we're looking at it?
Yeah, I think, on a master plan like this is created with probably a higher level design thinking than engineering would look at it. So it's not an engineering plan, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
those considerations are in there, but at any time, like the process we're doing now with implementation, we're pulling in engineers specifically to look at the existing conditions today.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you all. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thanks. Next up is the Stone Arch Bridge construction staging with Amber Blanchard from MnDOT.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to share my screen. All right, almost set. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen okay? Is it showing up?
Yep, we can see it. I
Very
can-
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening and thanks for having me today. I'm going to share a very brief presentation on the Stone Arch Bridge. And my one reason in coming here is to inform you all about the recommended staging plan that we have and get some feedback from you on that. I visited the Bicycle Advisory Committee just last week and talked with them about this, and I'm anxious to present this to you all today. So just to give you a little background, we've got a good project team here working, and that project team includes the MnDOT Metro District, which I'm a part of, the Cultural Resource Unit, which they do a lot of our historic work, the MnDOT Bridge Office, and we have an architectural historian on staff with the consultant McDonald and Mack Architects. And then our bridge engineer that is designing our repair work is LHB out of Duluth. And what we're doing for the bridge is we're really working to repair and maintain the integrity of the bridge itself and the stonework. And so we are working on doing full repointing of the existing mortar. We're going to be doing some repairs to minor stone cracking. We're going to be replacing any of the severely deteriorated stone that exists on the bridge. It's no more than 20% of the stone on the bridge will be replaced, and likely it will be less than that. We're going to repair the weep drains that are existing out there, as many of those areas where the water comes out has rusted or broken and fallen to disrepair. So we want to repair those and get them away from the stone. We're going to also be repairing the metal tie rods that go transversely into the bridge. You can kind of see them on the faces in some cases, and so we want to repair those ends. And then lastly, we're going to be repairing and, if necessary, and installing any scour monitoring system and the breakwater protection on some of those piers at the base as well. So like I had mentioned, here today to get some information from you all and reactions as to our access and staging plan. So this is a very long bridge, and we are recommending staging it half at a time, which means we want to basically block off about the middle of the bridge, and we're looking at the middle in this case being around where the truss span is. And what we want to do is block off there. Bicycles and pedestrians can still come to that truss span, look at the river, look at all the buildings, and then they'd have to go off the way they came. So in this case, our first stage would be we would block off the east half. So essentially from the Father Hennepin Park and the cul-de-sac over there on the east side to the east part of the truss span. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that there's a turnaround area for emergency vehicles that's wide enough for them to turn around in. And we feel that the truss span offers that opportunity for them. And then what we're going to do, and I'll show you this in a minute on the next slide, is we'll reverse it, and then people will have access from the east side to the truss span. And we'll have to go back the way they came on the east side. And really there's a number of reasons why we want to do this. First, it does allow our contractor that we get on board next year to work more efficiently and possibly reduce the cost implications as well. This is a very special bridge, as you all know. It is not on the trunk highway system, so MnDOT has not been able to use our trunk highway funds that we get from the legislature every year to do the repairs on this bridge. So we've had to use some non-trunk highway dollars in order to do that. And because of that, those non-trunk highway dollars are we were restricted to a certain budget, and that certain budget is 15 million, and that 15 million covers not only construction, but it also covers my salary that from working on this bridge, as well as others within MnDOT. It also covers our consultant contract that we have in place to do the bridge design and get the plans ready for bid. And then it also covers any work during construction that our inspectors will have to do while the bridge is under construction. So that 15 million is going to go a long ways. But because of that, we are very careful on how much construction we actually have. And so our budget is very tight. We also are doing this because we believe we'll have a more secure work area for the contractor. Another option would be to allow bikes and peds access all the way across, but that would mean that the contractor's work would interfere with bicycles and pedestrians on the bridge, because we are going to be working not only on the sides of the bridge and the piers and the pier bases. So we will have contractors out there working from the top as well as the river. So we wanted to make sure that we had the most safest, secure work area that we possibly could. Like I had mentioned before, there will be full public access to part of the bridge in both both stages, and we will communicate that during construction. And then last but not least is the safety of the traveling public, what I had mentioned earlier. So this next slide does show the second stage. So like I had mentioned before, the first stage would just allow access from the west to the truss span. This stage allows access from the east to this truss span. As you can see here, it's much more the bridge in this case. They have got a much larger stretch because we'll be able to finish that work first and allow them to come on the east side and go back that way as well. So just to give you a little update on where we're at and what the next steps are, in June, we had our 30% plan deliverable submitted from our consultant. And that is all done, of course, now that it is August. So upcoming in September, we have engagement with neighborhood groups and businesses as well on this topic, and want to get their feedback on the proposed staging that I just shown you. We also have our 60% plans submittal coming up at the end of September, excuse me. And then in December, our CRU, our Cultural Resources Unit, along with McDonald and Mack, will have another Section 106 consulting party meeting. They've had one already back in March, and we'll have another one coming up in December. And also in December, our 90% plans submittal is due. And then all of our plans and submittal memos and everything needs to be turned in and ready to go for the advertisement so that we can get the contractor on board by February 2022. And then in August of 2022, so about a year from now, we will be receiving bids from each of the contractors and deciding which contractor will be awarded this project. And then we're anticipating construction will begin that fall in September of 2022. So at this time, just wanted to, again, see if there's any feedback on the way we are recommending the staging and access take place from the contractor side. And I will open it up for any questions and feedback at this time.
I think Abigail was first. Did you have a question or comment, Abigail?
Yes, hi. Great, thanks for showing us this project. My one question.
You're muted, Abigail.
Oh, sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. You didn't really bring up anybody who uses the bridge for commuting purposes. So one, like if someone needs to actually get across the bridge during construction, will there be rerouting signs, detour signs? And two, on the bridge that is used for the detour, will there be like widened bike path safety measures for pedestrians and bicyclists who need to get actually across the river during this time? Because that's something you didn't mention.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. You're right, I failed to mention that part. Of course, yes, we will have a detour. Right now, we're anticipating the detour will be the 3rd Avenue Bridge. And as you know, the 3rd Avenue Bridge is under construction right now, and that construction does include substantial widening and improvement in the bike ped facility there. And so the 3rd Avenue Bridge is under construction, but it is going to be, or is at least anticipated and scheduled to be done and open to the public in November of 2022. So we will have that as a detour. There is a risk that if they fall behind on schedule that it won't be open in time. And we have been paying close attention to that. That is a risk in our on our project here, but we anticipate that everything is going smoothly. And even though there's only maybe a month or 2 of overlap, that shouldn't affect anything. And so the detour will be 3rd Avenue for both bikes and peds, and it will be signed accordingly. Yes.
Paul, did you have a question?
Yes, I'd just like to add on to that. What is going to be the route for bikes and peds on the 2 trails on that parallel the river? There's no way to get up to the 3rd Avenue Bridge from those 2 trails. So what's the going to be the signed route for those folks that want to get across the river?
Sure. Yeah. Right now, we'll look at that. We're actually developing our traffic control plans or detour plans right now, and we've been talking with the park board as well on that. And so we'll have a plan for that in order to get them up and over the river. I just don't have those details right now.
Got it. Also, I'm just curious on the project, is there going to be new railing and lighting and a new surface on the bridge when we're complete, or what's planned for that?
No, no, we, at this time, when we had our consultant go out there and do a site visit and inspection of the bridge, there was still some life left in the deck surfacing. So we're going to wait until that life is maybe another 15 to 20 years left. So we're going to wait until that time to do any work on top of the deck surface. And at this time, the railings and the lighting are in pretty decent shape too. So we're going to defer that until the next project, in, like I said, in about 15 years.
Okay, yeah, because the lighting, I go across that bridge almost every day, and the lighting, there's been several occasions where light poles have been tipped over. Bases are rusty, so I guess I would suggest you take a look at the lighting standards that are out there. And then also I don't think they're LED lighting, and it'd be nice to upgrade those to LED.
Sure, we'll take a look at those. Thank you.
Raina?
Hi, thanks for bringing this, Amber. My question has to do with if you know at this point how long it would take to do each half of the bridge.
I don't know how long each one would take just yet. We've got our consultant working on the construction schedule here, and they're right in the middle of that. So not quite sure yet how long they would take, but I do know at this time we're anticipating that construction will be about a 2-year duration. So we're thinking in the fall of 2025, this work should be done. But we will confirm that and then figure out how long each stage would take. My estimation at this point is the first stage will take a little bit longer just because there's more bridge area to cover in that first stage, and the second stage will likely be shorter, but I couldn't give you necessarily month or year detail on that just yet.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
I have some. I would like to echo what Abigail said about this being a route that people need to take, and I would urge you to not only have a clearly marked detour that is definitely open and is ideally wider than what is being provided as the standard, but to also, you mentioned that it is feasible and possible to allow for some through flow of pedestrian and bike traffic. And even if that's only for a portion of the day, I'd absolutely urge you to prioritize that, because the amount of time you're looking at for a detour, if you're using a wheelchair, if you walk and you're at all slow, is just, it's so much longer to go to Third, especially with getting up to the level of Third on the east side of the river. It's, they're not really, I don't think we would be asking that of drivers, and I understand the cost constraints, but if it is a cost constraint, I would really like to know what we can be doing or where that problem is, that we're looking at a 25-minute detour for people who don't drive from being able to use a major thoroughfare. And my second comment or question is, I've seen some drainage problems, not super often, but definitely on the bridge itself, where there's been 50 feet of standing water. It seems to be sort of a freeze-thaw issue. I don't know how common it is, but I would, if I'm remembering correctly, it's the kind of issue that will increase in frequency with more temperature fluctuations with climate breakdown. And I just would urge you to double check that.
Will do. Thank you. Appreciate that comment. And both of them. Yes, thank you.
Anything else? Comments or questions? For Amber? Okay. Well, if not, thank you for your presentation, Amber. We appreciate it. And that's it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Thank you.
Next up is Forrest Hardy from Minneapolis Public Works on 37th Avenue Northeast, and also K.C. Aitkins from SEH.
Thanks, Barb. This is Forrest with Public Works. It's been a while since we've been here with this project, and we have some updates based on trying to get pedestrians to and from our trail facility, which is some feedback that we heard at the BAC, and various other updates to share with you guys. I think you saw kind of an early schematic last time, but I'm going to give it over to Casey Atkins to walk through the layout.
One quick question, Forrest, are you guys looking for a resolution from us for this project?
Yes, we would be looking for a resolution from you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Forrest. I'll share my screen here. Just to give everyone a quick high-level overview of where we are talking about, we're looking at 37th Avenue Northeast, from Central Avenue here on the west side, all the way east to Stinson Boulevard, across the railroad tracks here. So with that, I will dive into the layout and move this out of my way. Working our way from the west side to the east side, starting at Central Avenue. What we're looking at is redoing the curb ramps in this location, as well as so a couple of issues that we're looking to solve here at Central Avenue. Number one, there's a crash problem in this location, especially with motorists trying to go around left turning vehicles, trying to go through, or left turns into pedestrians or bikers along the roadway as well. So that's one of the reasons why we're adding a left turn lane. The existing right turn lane would remain, and then we're looking at pulling out those through lanes at Central Avenue. 37th Avenue Northeast is a truck route, so we are looking to accommodate the WB40 as our design vehicle. And then this is a MnDOT roadway as well, so we also ran the W62, a longer truck, just to make sure that it can make this movement. But that's some of our constraints with this roadway. So since you've last seen this, just we do have that 10-foot wide trail on the north side. We've got a buffer between the motor vehicles and the trail users. We've got our roadway. And then on the south side, we have a buffer with, as well as a sidewalk in this location. So along the roadway, we're eliminating parking right now, proposed along the entire length, looking to widen those boulevard spaces for green stormwater infrastructure. So that narrows our roadway. The curb line on the south is actually moving north, but overall the center line is actually moving about 4 feet south, but it's going to feel a bit further north. I'm going to step our way to the east here as we talk through this. So some things that we heard from PAC and BAC was, how do we cross from the south side to the north side? So one thing that we're taking a look at here, we've looked at adding some median islands crossing at a few of the intersections along the corridor, just to help help people navigate and provide some mid-block crossings for folks. So we're looking at one at Northeast Polk. As we step along the corridor, we're also looking at tightening up the cross street radii by adding some curb extensions wherever we can. Again, keeping in mind that we're looking at a school bus, fire truck, garbage truck as well when it comes to making these turning movements. At Fillmore Street, this is another.
Can you clarify mid-block crossing? Do you mean T intersection?
I'm sorry, not mid-block. A two-stage crossing. I misspoke. A two-stage crossing, not mid-block.
Okay,
thank you. Yep. So two-stage crossing here at Fillmore. And Fillmore is one of those streets that crosses the railroad to the south. So we would anticipate that to be maybe more of a major movement. And Polk is one of those connection to the Grand Rounds. So that's again one of the reasons why that location has been chosen. Stepping along to the east, Buchanan, another kind of major, not major, but a bigger thoroughfare when it comes to this location in the street network. So again, looking at a two-stage crossing here, providing that median refuge island. One thing to note is we are proposing 9-foot wide boulevards wherever we can along the corridor. That's mainly for green stormwater infrastructure. We're really looking to maximize our space with stormwater treatment along this corridor where we can. And it will also help with snow storage in the winter. And then we get to Johnson Street, which is the signalized intersection, again, looking to add those left turn lanes. When we're adding left turn lanes along this corridor, it's really not a capacity issue, it's a safety issue. So it provides a space for those motorists to pull out of the motor vehicle traffic, not be worried about being rear-ended behind them, and then address not only motorists coming through, but also people walking and biking and rolling along the corridor. I will pause here just to see if there are any questions. I'll zoom out because this is the first page of that layout and we're about halfway through. I guess one thing I did forget to highlight was similar to that Upper Harbor Terminal project that you heard about today, we are looking at adding a truck apron here to slow passenger vehicles around this turn, but still accommodate some of those larger truck turning movements that are needed for this truck route. Any questions on this piece?
I've got one. I'm hearing you talk about the T intersections as if they are optional pedestrian crossings as opposed to default pedestrian crossings. And I'm concerned by that.
Yep. So we've had a lot of back and forth. So this is a Minneapolis and Columbia Heights project. It has federal funding. We've spoken with MnDOT. We've taken a look at where these crossing locations are. On the Minneapolis side, there are existing sidewalks. On the Columbia Heights side, we really only have existing sidewalks here at Tyler Street and Polk Street. So we've had to navigate this back and forth between the two agencies as well as some MnDOT review. We've taken a look at MnDOT tech memos around ADA ramp and compliance. So MnDOT Metro has reviewed it, MnDOT ADA and MnDOT Construction have looked at it. Their recommendation is to provide at least one crossing at all T intersections. We also have maintenance concerns, especially from the Columbia Heights side. They've committed to maintaining the trail, and they also feel they would then have to maintain those curb ramps, and their budget is a lot different than what Minneapolis looks like. So what we are looking to do is add one crossing at least at every T intersection. And then again, we've come back and we've added these median islands and 2 crossings on each side where we can at some of these kind of more major thoroughfares. And so this is kind of balancing the needs of each agency as well as the users. I understand where you're coming from. But this has kind of been what we've been through back and forth with MnDOT, trying to reduce the crossing length that people would have to go to, but MnDOT does have a tech memo out there that does say that you're really looking at trying to reduce, not make people go more than 1/8 of a mile out of their way. And in some of our instances, we have intersections like here that are about 90 feet apart. So while this is a T intersection on the south side, anyone looking at this from the north side views that as a mid-block crossing, and we'd have multiple mid-block crossings within very close range of each other. In addition, we have driveways and other things that are in our way. So that was a comment we heard, and we've tried to navigate this, and this is where we have landed.
I'm not seeing any at Taylor. And maybe you were, I am only on phone, so I'm looking at it without
Yep,
your cursor,
nope.
so I may have missed.
Correct. We've
clarification.
been in the process of updating this, so Taylor will be added. There will be one crossing added at Taylor.
I appreciate you explaining that. And I hope you're really pushing hard. I know the city of Minneapolis does not regularly or reliably clear curb cuts, so maybe Columbia Heights could take a piece or a page from our book there. But having those crossings, those curb cuts, even when we don't perceive there being something on the other side, is really important and basic pedestrian infrastructure, and it matters most to those who don't have the option of stepping over things or where that constitutes fall risk.
Yep. I understand. And so this we're definitely not making people go more than an eighth of a mile. Most of these are actually within just a couple 100 feet of each other. So it's trying to balance
5 minutes
that.
to a trip. If you're an average pace walker, you're then walking 5 extra minutes.
Yep.
And it might be 10 if you are slower. So I don't know if a 5-minute addition or 2.5 each way is within level of service standards for MnDOT, but if you can push them harder, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, we can take that back and have more conversations. So
Casey, can I ask a clarifying question about your referencing MnDOT? That's, you were looking for guidance, but MnDOT's not a decision maker on this, right? I think that's important to.
It is federal funding, so
clarify?
MnDOT will have to sign off on it.
Right. But it's not like it's still a city project that would go to our council.
Correct.
I just want that to be clear. Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So MnDOT's going to review it and we'll have to sign off on it, but ultimately it is a city project with Minneapolis and Columbia Heights.
And then I'd especially urge you to follow Minneapolis policy and to provide safe, accessible crossings at every intersection.
Okay. Any other questions on the western half before I move to the east? Okay. I'm gonna step down here. As we move to the east, our intersections actually get further spaced apart. We've got some longer block lengths than we do on the west side, and they align a little better as well. We don't have that offset street grid. So looking as we walk, roll, or move our way to the east, we've got Hayes Street here where we've got 2 transit stops. Again, looking at adding those pedestrian refuge islands, that 2-stage crossing here. And then as we move along, longer blocks, again, holding that 9-foot wide boulevard, trail on the north side, sidewalk on the south. At Hart Boulevard, a few of these intersections, we are looking at raising the trail crossing. So Hart Boulevard is one. 37th Place is the other, and then Johnson Street is the third. Columbia Heights was really interested in that. And then as we head into final design, we'll also look to see, depending on how they operate, they might consider adding them on other streets in the future along this route. So we're going to try to design so as not to preclude that. At Hart Boulevard, again, we've got a transit stop. This is a future BRT stop anticipated. So we've widened out our boulevard in this instance to accommodate that wider width. Again, not precluding that BRT coming through in this location. Our median island has extended. We've been working with Speedway just to make sure that their fuel trucks can get in and out of here, and this works well with their movements, that we're not impeding how they're operating with their business today. And then at 37th Place, again, we are teeing up this intersection right now. It's got a pretty significant skew. We've had a lot of discussions on what this crossing looks like. We've pulled it back to that 16.5 feet based on the best practice of that 2-way bike and trail facility that allows a left turning vehicle to address a motorist coming through here, stop here, pause, and address any bikers or pedestrians or anyone walking, rolling, scooting through here. And then make their movement through. And again, the reverse movement here, stop, address anyone using the trail, and then come through, be able to queue here and address any motor vehicle. In addition, with teeing this up, this should slow some of that cut through movement, especially when there's a train coming through here. We are adding a new trail and sidewalk crossing of the railroad. And then we'll get to Stinson Boulevard, where we'll just make some ADA upgrades here at this location. And the trail will for now we'll term it ends here. But again, on the future bike plan, there's a trail that's going to be heading south on Stinson Boulevard here, and then Columbia Heights is also looking someday to add a trail connection here. There's just some utilities and things with the railroad in here right now that just aren't a part of this particular project at this time. So with that, I will pause and again see if anyone's got any questions or comments. I know we're getting tight on time, so my apologies.
Paul, you had a question?
Yes, I'm wondering, does this project include street lighting?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you for asking. It definitely includes pedestrian scale lighting. And we have had a request also to make sure we're looking at specifically at this crossing at 37th Place, making sure that's very well lit for that crossing.
Okay.
But we'll be looking at pedestrian scale lighting along the entire corridor, and it's included with the project.
Okay. And would the lights be both on the Minneapolis side and the Columbia Heights side of the street?
We have to work through that detail. I believe so, but I would have to check for you.
Okay. And then one other comment on the just east of 37th Place there, where there's a straight median and a pedestrian crossing. Could you put a raised median in right where that ped crossing is?
Oh, here?
Right.
We could take that back and look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have
Go ahead, Julia.
I've got just a little slightly snarky one, but if we could be not prioritizing comfort and ease of movement for fossil fuel tanks and focusing on pedestrians, that would be an awesome bit of local work. I understand all the constraints, but whatever you can do around that would be much appreciated, and thank you for your work.
Thanks, Julia. Any other comments or questions? Well, we will put together a resolution for you and get that to you, since that's something you would like.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb.
You bet. Thanks so much for coming today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're at 6:08, which I thought was pretty good given what we had to cover today.
Thanks, Barb.
So if
Thank
nobody
you.
has any other questions or comments, why don't we adjourn? Sound good?
See you all on Monday.
That's right. See you Monday.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.